Hi, I'm Kate. Welcome to my tarot collection. Today I've got 22 Tarot de Marseille decks to show you, created between 1650 and 2023. We're going to have a look at some of the differences and similarities between the decks, but we're just going to look at 6 cards to keep things simple. First we've got the John Noblet, made in Paris in 1650. This is a reproduction by Jean-Claude Flornoy. On Le Battleur, you can see there's a typo in the card title. You'll also notice the dice on the table along with his cups and knives. He doesn't seem to have many fingers, particularly on this hand, and I'm not sure what he's supposed to be holding. You see he has 3 leaves between his legs. Le Pendu has these fingers extending from behind his shoulders. We'll see that in a few decks, but not all of them. The 2 of Coins has the maker's name and location on it. This is common in most Marseille decks. And then you've got the foliage to the sides here. The 2 of Cups also has the maker's information in the bottom of the card. This is less common, but not totally unusual. The 6 of Swords has the typical curved swords that you find in Marseille Tarot, and this upright flowery thing in the middle. And then the 9 of Batons is very plain. The Jean Dodal was made in Lyon in 1701, and this is another Flornoy reproduction. You can see differences in this card. The magician's fingers are a lot longer, it's much clearer what he's holding in his hand here. The dice have gone, and there's a piece of land missing from the side of his table leg. He also only has 1 leaf between his legs now. The fingers are still there on Le Pendu. Another misspelling on the card here. This should be an E. We've only got 4 fingers on each hand now. And for some reason, the gap between his legs has been coloured in. And the top pole is missing from the card. Again, we have the maker's name and location on the 2 of Coins. And again on the 2 of Cups. The fish don't have the tongues sticking out of their mouths on this card, as we saw before. The 6 of Swords is very similar to the previous one, and the 9 of Batons is also very similar. Next, we've got a deck created by Ignaz Krebs in Freiburg in Germany around 1736, and this is a facsimile published by Piatnik. You can see the colours are a lot less precise. There's a gap in his sleeve here. The table leg is coloured beside where it should be, and parts of the landscape are not coloured either. Where there were previously dice on his table, there's now a playing card. The fingers are missing from behind the shoulders in the pendu now, but we've got the top stick back, and the colouring on the side varies of the card. On the 2 of Coins, there's no text here. This is unusual for a Tarot de Marseille. The text instead is at the bottom of the 2 of Cups, which we've seen in other decks. The colouring on the 6 of Swords is particularly messy. And the 9 of Batons hardly has any colour at all. This deck was created by Claude Burdel in Freiburg in Switzerland in 1751. This is a recreation by Scarabeo, and they've removed the normal card titles to substitute their own multilingual titles. You'll see the details are much the same as in previous decks. We've got no coins or cards on the table this time. We're still missing the hands behind the shoulders on the hanged man here, but the colouring is more consistent. Lo Scarabeo have replaced the original maker's name and date with their own details. But they have retained this detail from the bottom of the Two of Cups. It's the first one we're seeing that's decorated instead of full of text. We've also now got variation in the handles on the Six of Swords. And the batons are more elaborately decorated as well. The Nicolas Conver deck was produced in Marseille in 1760, and this is a facsimile version published by Heron. The Conver is often considered to be the typical Tarot de Marseille. You'll see the details are fairly similar to the previous decks that we've seen, but the table is missing the dice or cards. The pendu again is very similar to other decks that we've seen, although you can now see a gap between his legs here coloured in. The Two of Coins has the maker's name and date, as we've seen in a lot of the other decks. And we've got this decorative panel on the Two of Cups. The Six of Swords is very similar. We've gone back to the plain handles again. And the Nine of Batons, again with the plain handles. This is another version of the Conver, although modernised and tidied up quite a bit. This one's published by Flame Tree Publishing as Tarot the Marseille Arcana. The details are very much the same as the previous deck, but the cards have a more modern appearance and quite different colouring. Particularly on these minors where you've lost the black in favour of this grey. Next we have the Gassmann Tarot de Marseille, created in Geneva around 1840. This is a Lo Scarabeo Anima Antiqua edition. The artwork is much the same as the previous ones we've looked at, but you can see extra detail. There's a frilly bit around the edge of his table here. The line work's different. We've got fancy bits in his clothing. Le Pendu is quite different. He's in a different pose, both his legs are up straight. And the structure that he's hanging from looks much more man-made rather than the previous twigs. Again, there's more detail in the line work on the minors. The cups are a lot more elaborate than the previous decks we've seen. And there's a lot more scales and texture going on in the fish. We've got the fancy handles back on the swords and on the batons, which have this added floral bits and pieces that we haven't seen before. Next up we have a mini deck published by Grimaud. While it's based on the Conver, which we've seen twice before already, it was redrawn in the 1930, and some of the details are slightly different. We've got dice back on the table here. The pendu looks a lot like the ones we've seen before. Again, the new maker on the Two of Coins. We have this blank panel here on the Two of Cups. The colours in this deck are a lot brighter and more vibrant than ones we've seen in previous reproductions. Next we have the Tarot Classic by AGM. This was produced in 1974 and is based on the Claude Burdel deck, which we saw earlier. So we've got the frilly table edges and the more detail on his outfit here. But we have a completely different colouring. I quite like this one, it's one of my favourites. Again, the less usual Hanged Man card. And we've got English titles now. The maker's information on the Two of Coins. The fancier cups that we saw last time. And the fancier handles on the minors here. I like the colours in this deck. Also from 1974, we have the RG tarot cards. We've got completely different colours here, but it looks like this deck was inspired by the Conver. As you can see, the minors are completely different. While the majors were definitely Tarot de Marseille, the minors are just pip cards. Now we have another tarot based on the Conver, created in 1983, published by Fournier. The main difference you'll see here is the colouring, which is completely different. We have coloured backgrounds now. Again, there's the dice on the table here. I like his blue hair. We've got Fournier's maker's details on the Two of Coins. And the details of the artists who worked on the deck on the Two of Cups. The backgrounds of all of the minors are different colours depending on the suits. It gives a very different feel to the deck. Next, we've got Le Véritable Tarot de Marseille, or the True Tarot of Marseille, by Kris Hadar. Rather than being a reproduction of a particular historic deck, this deck draws inspiration from several historic decks and combines details to create a new Tarot of Marseille. The details on this card look a lot like the Conver, but we don't have the dice or the playing card. I like the Pondu's blue hair. There is this date 1181 here. I'm not sure what that's supposed to be. Tarot was definitely not in existence back then. It was created in the 15th century. I like the lips and the tongue on the fish here, and the details on the bottom panel. Rather than the flower we usually see here, we've got a leaf or a bud perhaps. The numerals are missing from the minors. There's a little extra floral detail on the 9 of batons. Similar to the previous deck, we've got the Jodorowsky Camoin, published a year later in 1997, and again, an amalgamation of several historic decks. You'll notice there's 3 dice now on the table here, and one of the knives is curly. A lot of the details seem to have come from the Conver, but some have come from other cards as well. Again, we've got a very early date here of 1471. There's angels and a bird in the bottom panel of the Two of Cups. The colouring's a lot different to Kris Hadar's deck. We've got the flower in the middle here, and the plain 9 of batons with the numerals on the side. Next, we've got the CBD Tarot de Marseille from 2010, and this is a reproduction of the Conver. It's back in traditional colouring, and it's got a lot of the details that we've seen before. We've got both the original maker and the new maker on the Two of Coins. And the minors are much like others that we've seen. Le Tarot Noir by Matthew Hakier from 2013 is a bit more modern. We've got completely different colouring, And while a lot of the details we've seen in other cards, like the 3 dice, the curly knife, some are completely different. The table has all 4 legs in the scene, and the characters' legs are crossed. The pendu is much like the traditional Tarot de Marseille, but in a new art style. On the 2 of coins, we've got the maker's details and the date of the deck. The 2 of cups is missing the bottom panel entirely. And the rest of the minors are fairly traditional in appearance. The Tarot de Marseille par Paul K from 2015 identifies itself in its title as Tarot de Marseille, but it has a modernized style and the scenes are slightly different. Le pendu is hanging by his neck, he's not suspended by his feet. There's no maker's details on the banner on the 2 of coins, instead it's this branch. The 2 of cups is fairly traditional, but again it's missing the bottom panel. And the rest of the minors are quite different from the traditional Marseille. The Trionfi della Luna by Patrick Valenza from 2016 blends the unique art style of this artist with the traditional Tarot de Marseille symbolism and style. We've got Italian titles now. You can see a lot of the details are similar to the Marseille, but a lot are different as well. The Hanged Man is a cocooned creature with a snake wrapped around him, fairly different from the traditional card. But the minors have much in common with historic decks, with the maker, location and date on the 2 of coins. The 2 of cups is very familiar. And while the vegetation is different in the swords and the batons, the arrangement is typical. The Lost Code of Tarot from 2016 has some cards that are clearly inspired by the Marseille, like this one, and this one, with the twigs up the side, but the pose is slightly different, and the minors are completely different. You could argue this is not a Tarot de Marseille deck, but I think you can see the inspiration in the majors. Tarot de Marseille of the new Incarnation from 2021 is a little bit different. We've got fairly standard Marseille majors, but the minors have illustrated scenes. You can still see the coin and the foliage inspired by traditional Marseille decks. And again, the cup and the fish. But we've now got figures and scenes on all of the minors. And these are intentionally different from typically illustrated scenes that we find in the Rider-Waite tradition, for example. Also from 2021, the Tarot Archetypal is arguably a Tarot de Marseille, although you wouldn't think so from the majors, which are very different. But the minors are fairly similar, although we do have a snake here on the ribbon. You can see that they are clearly inspired by the traditional Tarot de Marseille. Then we've got the Tarot de Marseille-Waite, also from 2021. This deck blends traditional Marseille imagery with Rider-Waite symbolism. in the majors. You can see that it has been inspired by both traditions. And then the minors are much more Rider-Waite-Smith related. And the last deck I've got for you is the Squid Cake Marseille from 2023. You can see that it's clearly inspired by the Tarot de Marseille, but it has these quirky blue-skinned people and lots of pink colouring. It's a lot more modern in character, but the style is clearly inspired by the Marseille tradition. I like these little strawberries. That was a quick look through 22 different Tarot de Marseille decks from my collection. Let me know which one you liked best, or if there's a different deck that I didn't include that you prefer. Thank you for watching.